when it comes to democratic socialism, let's for any Republican that might come across this, let's forget about words, definitions, labels, titles, whatever. Let's just take a look at where your party was during what you call the golden years and refer to a period when you say "Make America Great Again." Right? Let's take a look at the 1950s real quick. Why don't you go ahead and Google this letter from Eisenhower to his brother in 1954. And one part of this letter I want to highlight. He writes, "The political process of our country are such that if a rule of reason is not applied in this effort, we will lose everything, even to a possible and drastic change in the Constitution. This is what I mean by constant insistence upon moderation in government. Should any political party attempt to abolish Social Security, unemployment insurance, and eliminate labor laws and farm programs, we will not hear of that party again in our political history. There is a tiny splinter group, of course, believes you can do these things. Among them, Ray Hunt, you possibly know his background, a few other Texas oil millionaires, an occasional politician or businessman from other areas, for their number is negligible and they are stupid." What's kind of amusing about this, George W. Bush was 13 years old when he wrote that. Back then, young Republicans used to champion workers' rights, unions, and stuff like that. They didn't go around talking about how cool that mustache guy was and how epic Grapien is. You know what I mean? I always like this quote by Eisenhower here. "I have no use for those, regardless of their political party, who hold some vain and foolish dream of spinning the clock back to days when organized labor was huddled almost as a helpless mass. Only a fool would try to deprive working men and women of the right to join a union of their choice." All right, Eisenhower's platform. You can Google this, look it up, going into the 56 election there. The Declaration of Faith. "On a centennial year, the Republican Party again calls to the minds of all Americans the great truth first spoken by Abraham Lincoln, the legitimate object of the government to do for a community of people whatever they need to have done but cannot do at all or cannot so well do for themselves in their separate and individual capacities, but in all that people can individually do as well for themselves, government ought not to interfere." Underneath some of their tax policies here, further reductions in taxes of particular consideration for low and middle income families. Compare that to today, which is the direct opposite. Initiation of sound policy tax reductions will encourage small independent business to modernize and progress. Continual study additional ways to correct inequities and the effect of various taxes. Consistent with Republican administration accomplishment of stemming the inflation, yada, yada, yada. All about the inflation. Although compared to today, we're all about tariffs which drive inflation. The Republican Party believes that sound money, which retains its buying power, is an essential foundation of new jobs, a higher standard of living, protection of savings, and secure national defense and general economic growth of the country. If you notice, the power of the dollar has fallen almost 10% since Trump's gotten elected because of these tariffs. Underneath labor is the United States, the men and women who, with their minds, their hearts, and hands, create the wealth that is shared in this country. They are America. The record of performance of Republican administration goes still further. The federal minimum wage has been raised for more than 2 million workers. Social Security has been extended to an additional 10 million workers, and the benefits raised for 6.5 million. The protection of unemployment insurance has been brought to 4 million additional workers. There have been increased workmen's compensation benefits for longshoremen and harbor workers, increased retirement benefits for railroad employees, and wage increases and improved welfare and pension plans for federal employees. Unions have grown in strength and responsibility and have increased their membership by 2 million. Eisenhower administration also invested heavily into infrastructure and education as well. In fact, special programs we put up for special kids gave us a whole generation of engineers, scientists that gave us things like antibiotics, semiconductor shit like that. We also worked tirelessly to make sure that farmers were well taken care of, because before, in our nation's history, after every giant war, there's always a really bad period adjusting to peacetime markets. So the government worked hand in hand with farmers to make sure they expand their markets as much as possible, not implement drastic tariffs and native as fucking policies. But you also saw the Small Business Administration really get strengthened and start really helping small businesses as well. This is the election of 1956. This was the election 10 years later after the Voting Rights Act was passed. Anyway, good talk.